The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is a ForceCenter podcast feed. I'm Ken Napzok.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
And this is also, Joseph, where we talk about news, and we're getting back to Star Wars news, but we're still getting back into the rhythm of, well, Star Wars, but also pop culture around the entire landscape and life itself. As you have this wonderful catchphrase I'm going to write down and put up in my office so I can remember it. About what we
Yes, we were discussing describing ForceCenter not just as a podcast because we're getting launched on video, but that ForceCenter is a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. And a part of that is I listened to a couple of podcasts that some friends sent me of like, oh, here's a cool podcast about drumming, or here's a cool podcast about sound effects or whatever. And I don't usually have a lot of time to listen to podcasts. And a couple of those intros were just like, we talk about soup, monkeys, and pregnancy. And they're like, you know what? Everything tells you to, specify when you brand. But also just there's a freedom in that, like, our podcast can be, or not even our podcast, our show can be whatever we want it to be. And I think it's embracing that spirit.
Embracing the spirit. And as Joseph mentioned, as we talked about last week, we'll be going to video on a regular basis, starting the episode that airs November 28th, which will be our look at the Ahsoka series. But we are recording now, so we might release something. If you've been on Patreon, you got a preview of what our faces look like while we kind of record the podcast recording and turn it into a show all in one thing. So I always say it's like back in the day, I don't think they do this anymore because we don't really have malls as much as we used to. But there always used to be like one radio station in the mall with the windows. You could just sit and watch the DJ work. And I think that's part of where I got the fascination with being a DJ, was just like, wow, what are they doing in there? So consider it a mall, a virtual mall.
Yeah, some people are in the mall making Orange Julius, and some people are talking into microphones. Look at all the things you can be when you grow up.
Look at this. Before we get to the news, we always want to remind you today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. That's right. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. A little bit later, we'll have a ForceCenter Recommends, an audiobook we think you should try out on us. And it's been a lot of fun to promote Star Wars books again. Though we always, some people would ask us, hey, the books weren't necessarily struck work, but we just kind of felt in the spirit of the bigger picture where it all leads back. We wanted to just kind of draw that line, but it's good to be back to celebrating Star Wars books as well. Even though you and I are catching up, we're getting there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there was catching up to do before the strike, and there's even more catching up to do now.
Absolutely is. Excited to start phase 2 as phase 3 rolls out in the High Republic. Before we move on, of course, we always have an ask, and we'd like to make sure we hit that K. Joseph, what is our ask today?
Yes, our ask. And I like saying it like that because of the good clarity, and also it sounds like a relative of Bosk. Anyway, our ask is to build our YouTube numbers back up as we head into the launch of our video version of ForceCenter. Like Ken said, it is coming this Tuesday. What month is it?
We're
November 28th. Yeah. Tuesday, November 28th. Coming very soon. We would love to build our YouTube numbers back up. Understandably, when we were not discussing Star Wars or really almost any pop culture outside of books and music, our numbers dropped considerably. We had a very positive number when I checked this morning, Ken, is instead of negative 38, it was negative 14, which actually means I think people are subscribing and resubscribing. We would love to get back up to the number of 7,500. That is our goal. That is our ask.
His cousin that shows up for Life Day. That's like an artist. And he and Bosk don't get along. That's what it'd be. Yeah. A lot of fun there. Yeah.
Love it.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's fun to see the numbers be less negative. Look, I always give some percentage of room to bots or something weird happens and everything, but we understand, but we're happy to see the numbers go back up. Life is a numbers game. As we talk about the great adventure of life around here, we always like to catch up with Star Wars or life adventures. And as I'm going to stop saying this eventually, but it's exciting. exciting to maybe incorporate Star Wars again into life. Well, Joseph, I know you had a full weekend. I'm cheating a little bit here because I follow you on social media. So I know you had a little bit more robust weekend than me. I had a weekend in which I was just mostly doing a lot of work. But I'll say this is also a promotion for something coming up. But I was open to maybe to a fault last week on the show of just trying to reconnect with Star Wars. And that's still an ongoing process. But it's a good process. One of the things very surprisingly, I'm going to be moderating a panel at LA Comic-Con that is with behind the scenes people like Brian Matjes, Alexei Dimitriou, Maria Sandoval. These are like the head of the hair department, a makeup artist, concept artist. And I'm producing the panel as well. And so I had to like go through and kind of like get my questions together, but it was a journey through the behind the scenes. And it was a journey through the passion that goes into shows like Ahsoka, a show that I've been open, that I maybe had some struggles with and still have some struggles with and have some things I want to talk about it. But talk about the show, but it was a reminder of not only what we've done for coming up on 10 broadcast seasons here, but just a reminder that all these shows are made with love. And even if there's some things you don't connect with, or even if some things that you might feel are just, hey, wrong, why did they do that? The people behind it all approach it with a great amount of love, a great amount of respect for what came before, and also have ideas on how to improve it and change it and push new boundaries with it going forward. So that was a needed little journey. I'll give the panel details at the end of the show. But a little bit of maybe force karma, or just the force working in mysterious ways, where I had to sit and concentrate on it when I've been maybe putting some of that stuff off before. So I spent a lot of time working on that this weekend, and the results are going to be fun. But it's not all about me and my journey back. It's by the way, it's not I'm not leaping giant canyons. It's also a rhythm thing. We've been so out of rhythm too. And as we discussed, like we were pedal to the metal heading into the strike with lots of shows, lots of books, lots of conventions. So I think, as I talked about last week, that's definitely a part of it for me, and I think a part of it for you as well. I would imagine, of just being extremely, extremely, extremely close to it, and then can't talk about it is gonna force some feelings. Yeah, I mean, push it. I got really into cooking during the lockdown, and then I got out of rhythm of cooking. I need to reconnect to cooking too. So it's not I'm not picking on Star Wars. It's just a lot of things in life.
Well, if you could read more about the hair and makeup that goes into cooking. Yeah. Well, that one doesn't quite work. I really agree with you, though. I'm excited for you to host that, and I'm excited for the people at the convention, because you'll do a great and insightful job with that and understanding what people actually do. And I know this is not your problem with Ahsoka, and I've never heard you level this criticism, but one we hear a lot is that when people don't like a show, doesn't work for them, don't like a choice, the big L word, lazy, comes out. Right. And I totally understand people not liking things. I always bristle at the lazy. Mm-hmm. And I think reconnecting with the number of people, like every tiny detail you see on screen, that was someone's life for a month. Mm-hmm. And I've always felt that way. I feel that way even stronger after working on short films. Mm-hmm. Really like to be able to see the short film in front of people. And I kind of just want to like point at that shirt and just to be like, do you know how many stores I went to? I almost got in an accident and it cost this much money, but I didn't have a budget. And that's just a shirt, in a short film. Staring at Ahsoka and just like the amount of humans who gave everything they have as humans to make her head tails look as cool as possible. Mm-hmm. It won't make the show perfect, but to me, it's always a good way to reconnect with. People made this out of love and hard work, even if it doesn't work for every viewer, and that's fine. Yeah, it's been this reminder to how, and it's something we've done here for a long time, choosing the words carefully, even when you're expressing some kind of a criticism or problem that you have with it personally, reminding yourself that other people who watched it do like it. You can't just say the Marvels is bad. I know a lot of people that love the Marvels. So that kind of it's bad, capital B, it's a fact, isn't right, isn't true. And what you're talking about
You sets are crazy. I always go to the example of that damn coffee cup on the set again. Kind of actually just funny, but that people see, Dan and Dave want it out. They want it. There's so many things going on. Like, I'm surprised my lunch wasn't in one of the shots for, the short film, because it's so much going on. So anyways, you're absolutely right. So much love into it. And it's nice to be reminded.
I'm upset I didn't get more of your food into the short, but next time. Yeah.
But you, sir, had a wonderful weekend. Your social media was just busting and bursting out with nice photos.
I had really, really nice couple days. November 17th is a special day if you like Star Wars, because it is, of course, Life Day, the anniversary of the actual broadcast of the Star Wars Holiday Special that Life Day came from. But it's also my wedding anniversary, so a very special day. Life Day, my wedding anniversary, the anniversary of the release of the James Bond film Casino Royale. So much to celebrate on November 17th every year. For the Star Wars adventure, I was lucky to be able to pre-order one of the weirder action figures that they've made available recently, which is the Life Day Chewbacca. An action figure I really thought I would never see the light of day. But it's Chewie in a big red robe. He comes with the orb. He comes with weird bendy hands so he can actually hold the orb, because that would be upsetting. It's like Life Day Chewie. He can't hold this sacred object. Anyway, so I opened Life Day Chewie from the larger box, not from the package. And that was really nice. And then my wife and I just had a wonderful holiday weekend. We'd really been talking about going out of town, but we've been traveling a lot. So we decided, hey, you know what? There's a lot around us that we haven't experienced. And I think that was really what I took from the day and from the weekend celebrating. And we're lucky we live in a big city of Los Angeles, so there's more than you could ever explore living here 3 lifetimes. But I think it's true no matter where you live, that there's always those places that you go by that you go, God, that looks kind of interesting. I've heard good things about that. And you never make it. And we've just really been like, we're going places, damn it. We don't need to go to a different city. There's a whole other city on one block of Los Angeles. So anyway, long way to say, we went to this jazz club called the Baked Potato. And I've driven by this place a million times. It's got a cartoon baked potato, the weird phenomenon where you put a face on the thing you're going to eat. And I always thought it was a baked potato place. And like 5 years ago, my wife's like, that's a jazz club. Like, the Baked Potato is a jazz club? Yeah. So apparently it's a business that started almost 50 years ago with the absolute like dorm room joke of like, what if we started a place that only played jazz and only served potatoes? And that's what they've done. They got they got a couple of salads, they got a couple of desserts, but their entire menu is just dumping stuff on a baked potato. I had a chicken parmesan baked potato, tiny, intimate, not fancy jazz club, not like you have to be dressed up in a suit and tie and have a martini, but like down to earth, working class, jazz is for everybody jazz club. It was real nice, but it felt like, am I on the set of like some show set in the 60s for a New York basement jazz club? It had that vibe. It was phenomenal. So for me, it was just a great reminder to check out what is awesome that is around you.
I know you had more, but I used to live with a walking distance of that for like 7 or 8 years. And I thought it was just a baked potato factory type, like a restaurant I get baked potatoes, which is not a lie from what you're describing. But I love jazz and appreciate jazz, but I was disappointed when I found out it was a jazz club. So I was like, that was a baked potato restaurant. But okay. So I'm glad you got to experience it. And that sounds wonderful, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the we just went that night because it was our anniversary. We didn't pick. It was the Richard Matheson group, and his son was the drummer, and I think there were some session musicians because he was calling out cues, and it's such an intimate space you could hear him call out cues. And this is an older gentleman who looked frankly like Santa Claus. So it was like super exciting jazz Santa playing music while I ate a baked potato. It was a good weekend. And I could go on, but I'm going to be done. I want to get on to the Star Wars.
Let's get on to the Star Wars indeed. We're going to talk about Star Wars news. Oh, this is kind of exciting. We are back into the grind of Star Wars news, and it can sometimes grind down where you're like, all right, we'll look at this teaser poster, and and some of that's fun, and some of them are beautiful art. The break and then coming back, I actually have a renewed energy, Joseph, for Star Wars news to actually talk about what's going on. So
yeah, me too. I have a renewed energy and a renewed perspective. I'm excited to talk about every one of these things. Some of the news things that we picked out, because we're looking back at news that has happened across the time that we've been on break during the strikes. Some of them I'm super excited to talk about. Been really excited to talk about. But it's also been a great time to go, we don't have to cover every bit of news. And it's been great to check back in and go, let's talk about the things that we're passionate about and have a true response to, as opposed to, we were getting into some times there where like some of the news about movies that may or may not happen was getting kind of repetitive. So it's really fun to come back to it with a fresh and renewed perspective, and also in understanding that we don't have to cover every story.
Yeah, and that's actually just it's a liberation in my soul. But we're excited to get to some. And as Joseph said, we did go through a lot of the stories we've missed during the over 118 days of the strike and all that stuff. But we might miss some. Don't worry. If we maybe come back to it later, we might. Or as Joseph said, we maybe felt it wasn't high on the depth chart of discussions. But we got a kind of a recent bit of news from last week. Taika Waititi speaks and Star Wars fans talk. Of course they do. We're talking as well. While promoting Next Goal Wins, Taika was asked about his Star Wars film. He said it will be, and there was a dramatic pause, a Taika Waititi film. He then said it's going to piss people off. There's another quote from an Entertainment Weekly article. You've got, Joseph, we'll go into that. First, I just want to start. This is a fact, right? It will. It will, because of course it will. But what do we actually take from that? And is it a pissed off because it'll be too uniquely him, which seems like it might be? Is that a comment on the fandom overall? Probably is. These are all leading questions, but let's comment on the Taika discourse that has emerged, including a more serious and thoughtful response. Well, I think this is thoughtful as well, but a different kind of response in the other article.
Yeah. This is fascinating. It feels like during the strike, it was like a storm or a fever broke, and it feels like a lot of people are being a little bit more direct. Taika Waititi always been direct, but this is very like, screw it, is a guiding principle. I think my first reaction to this is, yes, Taika Waititi is in this hot moment of ups and downs that we will talk about. But I go back to when Rise of Skywalker came out, and some people didn't like it, which perfectly fine to not like it. But there was people saying they just tried to be people pleasers. And it was always weird to me of like, the Star Wars fandom is too big. You can't. It's really hard to pander to the Star Wars community at this point. So I feel like this is very, very true of Taika's film, that it will be uniquely him and that will annoy people. But I feel like that's true of almost any Star Wars film, of like, and it will piss some people off because it's impossible to pander to the entire community.
Yeah, it's just simply a fact. Even the way he said it and how it was, how it might relate to him. And I'm, none of these folks, they're not completely insulated from the discussion world. It's funny when you run into some folks that maybe have a different kind of career path and they're off producing things in the studio. They're kind of like, I don't know. I don't go on TikTok. What's a podcast? Like, there's some people that I've run into that have that vibe. Taika couldn't escape it, especially even his last film, which I haven't had a chance to see yet. I don't even know if it's out on a big scale, but I've seen some tweets about it. Some people going, it's great. Other people going, oh, it's lazy. It's just like you can't win for losing these days, I guess.
Yeah. I think, I also think, that this is such a great news story for us to dive back into, because in the grand tradition of Star Wars news, we are talking about something that won't happen for many, many years, if it happens at all. We're going to talk more about the upcoming slate later. Mm-hmm. But a part of my reaction to this was like, this is really intriguing. This is really funny. This is really telling about who Taika Waititi is. And it will also have absolutely no relevance to us until about 2037, if this movie even comes out.
doing the math on that, he has said in that other news bite, I think he said he's got 3 or 4 of the scripts he's working on. He just finished this one. He wants to take his time with this. There is another quote in the past from like Kathleen Kennedy not too long ago saying, he needs a third act, and they're still working on it. And I want him to take all the time in the world. But it is interesting to do that math. You're right. We got the 3 announced, and we're going to get into the slate and everything. But it's like this conversation will be a faint memory by the time this film comes out.
Yeah. Here's that other quote you've been mentioning. It's from an Entertainment Tonight interview. Taika saying, "At the moment, I'm still developing something with them," meaning Lucasfilm. "Like me, they have a lot of projects going on. I think they're going to push it until I finish these other projects," Waititi told ET. "I've got about 4 other scripts that I'm trying to finish. My thing is I want to take my time with that and get it right. I don't want to rush this movie." So that is a less cheeky, more straightforward answer. But also in some ways saying the same thing of like, I'm going to really take my time to make the movie I want to make. And, we're developing it, and news will come out eventually.
And that, as a Star Wars fan, I couldn't want anything more than that, right? Someone says, I love this. I respect it. I want to get it right. It's done. Sold for me. I might have some bigger questions, and his style is always debated, and I'm a fan of his style, but I know it doesn't always translate. I know the most recent Thor wasn't well received. I know you have some thoughts on it in a positive sense. We're always gonna have those discussions, but this is what I want from an artist. I don't want anyone to say, diving in, third act, we'll get to set and figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's my biggest takeaway from this, and I'd be interested to hear what you think. I think Taika is an indie filmmaker, and he has never backed off from that perspective. He landed a huge hit with Thor Ragnarok. I think part of that was, I do think it's a really good film, a really well-balanced film, where both the comedy and the depth are clear. But I also think it landed at the right moment where Chris Hemsworth clearly had phenomenal comedy chops that weren't being put to full use in Thor. It redefined the character. It let Chris Hemsworth stretch a little bit. It was wearing its politics about a lot of things on its sleeve. So it was just sort of this like drink of fresh water in a desert moment. I don't think Taika has changed. I think he's like, everything I did with Thor Ragnarok, I'm going to do harder and faster with Thor Love and Thunder. And it didn't work for people, but Taika didn't change. He only got more Taika, more, I'm an indie filmmaker, which means I would love for you to like my film, but this is an extension of me. This is an expression of me. I am putting myself, not on celluloid, I guess, but on ones and zeros. I'm putting my personality on this film. And I think that's who he's always been. And it's more just that that people fell in love with that and then fell out of love with that. How do you feel about kind of Taika as holding on to this, like, I'm an indie filmmaker who happened to break into the big time and make some big blockbusters, but I've never changed. I'm an indie filmmaker.
I really agree with that. And it happens a lot in the world of art, right? Like a band breaks for being who they are. And then they're by the second album, third album, people are like, God, I hate who they are. What can you do? And I think you got to stick to your guns and adapt and change along the way and try to think that cool. But the conversation always around Taika and Star Wars is the comedy aspect of it, right? And rightfully so. I don't necessarily agree that he's just a comedy filmmaker, and I don't think you would say that as well. I think that seems to always come up because he does funny things, but he does have a lot of heart into it. That 8th episode of Mando season 1 has some comedy that even you and I on the record are saying, the Biker Scout stuff isn't our favorite, but it ends with this great piece of heart art at the end with the sacrifice and just kind of where I trust him. And what you said, I really like what you said in there about Chris Hemsworth of there was some comedy chops waiting to explode out, especially in the Marvel world. Taika got that out. There's a fear and an understandable trepidation about comedy Star Wars, and no one's suggesting that he's going to put out a sitcom like Star Wars comedy film, but humor, laugh, if he builds a story around a crew or, something, the interpersonal, relationships going on, the comedy is going to come out of that. It might be more, quote, funnier than other films, but I bet it's going to have the same heart. I bet it's going to reach for the same big lessons and themes that all of Star Wars does, as he did in that episode. So I like what you're saying about him, and taking that from his quotes of, it's going to be a Taika Waititi film. And that's what we want.
Yeah. And I really do hope that that it's maybe even a smaller story in terms of galactic significance, and his own characters, and can really explore all the ideas that he is interested in. Because, I think I'm resistant to Star Wars comedy sometimes of like, if it turned out to be like, this is a young Kylo Ren and he's tripping and making jokes, I might not like it myself.
Yeah.
But if you're inventing your own characters, I think it's a different thing.
Kylo tripping and making jokes. Now that you said it.
Yeah. Real quick thing for me, is we talk about Star Wars, but also, free ourselves a little bit to explore the other pop culture. I do think Thor Ragnarok is a really, really solid film. And I think the comedy and the heart and the heaviness is balanced really well. So I do personally think it is a better balanced film than Love and Thunder. But one of the things that's really fascinating to me about Taika, and one of the reasons I love Love and Thunder, is that his style and what makes people mad is he loves combining not just comedy, not wry, sarcastic comedy, but big, outlandish comedy with not just depth or heart, but like devastatingly serious.
Mm-hmm.
And like in I know you haven't seen Thor Love and Thunder. A lot of the bits are like, that joke didn't land for me because it's too big, or I saw it coming 5 minutes earlier. Not all the comedy works for me, but it's something close to my heart to be bold enough to combine the extremes of human experience from the absolute absurdity of being alive in the way that comedy can express that.
Yeah.
To absolute kind of some of the most serious issues we can deal with as artists. And it's a fascinating thing where sometimes if there's any comedy, that's all that people can take away. And
yes,
I do think in Love and Thunder that the balance was probably off, but I've seen so many people go, it was just goofy. The jokes are goofy. It's about a woman dying of cancer, and what if all of our gods abandon us?
Right.
It's, it's got some heavy stuff, but there's this thing sometimes where if the comedy is too big, even a little too big, that's all people see. And I'm really interested in your take on that as somebody who loves comedy, but I think you love comedy, but I think you are also unsure about big outlandish comedy. How do you feel about combining outlandish comedy with like really deep, really serious ideas?
Yeah, I think it absolutely could work. And yeah, there's a, if I'm in the mood to sit and watch the Naked Gun films, and just go through some Zucker Brothers kind of slapsticky stuff, which I grew up liking, I'll do it. And I still think you can find some themes in there and dig into the jokes. But I'd rather have my comedy, what you're describing. And I think what you might be touching on here, we've discussed it before, and we maybe have to own our own experiences as people who dabble in comedy, but also hopefully can find some purpose behind it. There is even in award shows, right? You are a dramatic performer or you're a comedic performer, and never the two shall meet, especially when it comes to awards. It's a little force field goes up when people hear comedy jokes and that doesn't contain meaning. And it's been an ongoing battle with me in comedy, and words matter, and what we're talking about matters, and how you joke about it is important. And there's great purpose behind it. So yeah, there's even stuff, in the Thor Ragnarok, a movie I've seen and do enjoy. There's a couple, shake weight references. I've talked about that before, but that's not going to be in Star Wars. And I don't think he's going to put that there. And I love what we do in the shadows, the series, as a lot of people. I'm not alone in that, obviously. And it's outlandish, but it's got so much heart. I don't want people to be afraid of that if that even kind of shows up in Star Wars in a film.
Yeah. Yeah. A part of me almost feels like I would love it if in the year 2037, which is the imaginary year that I think this film will come out in a joking way, if in the year 2037, Lucasfilm was just like, bam, the first Star Wars comedy, labeled it as a comedy.
Yeah.
And then when people approach it as a comedy going in, I think sometimes they're more open to discovering the heart and the humor and the relationships, because people start watching What We Do in the Shadows to watch a comedy.
Yeah.
And then become really hooked on the relationships, which are sincere and real.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, it's scaring me because I actually kind of agree with your 2037 year in or around. And Ragnarok came out in 2017. So imagine 20 years later, audiences might be open for something entirely different, have no understanding of who Taika or Thor Ragnarok was, because as Taika says himself, they're not going to remember my name. They're not. 40 years from now, I'm not going to be a trivia answer. Whatever that conversation that broke out of that around that. That's fat. That's almost scary. It's almost scary. But we can.
It's deeply scary. I take back my joke of 2037. Let's get it a little closer to 2027.
I mean, it's not inaccurate. We're not done talking movies, though. That was some of the latest news, but also a little tidbit came out, and we're going to talk about Kevin Feige's Star Wars film and it being a no-go. Feige was asked by Entertainment Weekly's Ash Crossan, friend of the show, former guest, in early November if his Star Wars movie is happening. And he said, and this is my editorial, a little brusquely, no. End of interview. He didn't say that. And they all love Ash. No other comment. But so let's definitely dive in. Thoughts on this? Dare we say unsurprising news, Joseph?
This is the least surprising news I have ever heard. This is the least surprising no I've ever heard. And I have heard no in lots of contexts in which I was expecting to say no. Yeah. Pitches, asking people out on dates. I've heard a lot of no's I was expecting to hear, and this is still the least surprising. That interview is really funny because this is such a strange time for the MCU. Mm-hmm. And Ash's interview with him was great, and he has obviously a good relationship with Ash as an interviewer, and it felt like he was trying to kind of dole out a little bit, give a little bit more to entertain ideas of the MCU without spoiling anything, all that. Mm-hmm. It was like watching a ballet between a producer, an expert producer, and an expert interviewer doing a beautiful ballet about the MCU. And then that Star Wars movie happened? No. Bye. And it felt purposeful too. It's just like, I'm not going to be asked about this 800 more times. I'm just going to cut this off. It's done. It's done.
Done. I love that, actually. I hadn't even thought about it in those terms. That it wasn't that he was annoyed with the question. He was just, I can see the future because I've experienced the past. No. Let's move on.
Yeah. It really, I wanted the comedy of like tapping the mic, looking directly in the camera and just saying, no. And no one ever asked me about it again. It's done. Leave it be.
The curtain comes down on like a Wes Anderson movie. Just now, look, we say unsurprising news, but it wasn't like this hadn't been worked on or talked about. The whole involvement of Michael Waldron, and he had some comments out there and over the last year or so about working on it. I have no doubt that this was a thing, that this was on some whiteboard somewhere or a cork board with a Post-it note, just hammered into the wall of Feige film. And I still think it could be possible down the line. And there's a lot of conversation I've already seen this weekend of, well, he's got his hands full with Marvel. Yeah. He's always had his hands full with Marvel. I don't think this current phase is distressed. I think they're trying to rebuild some things. And there's a lot of conversation to be had around how the movies are discussed and the box office conversation and some of the bad faith arguments around those discussions. I haven't seen the Marvels. I know you have, and feel free to bring that into it. So I don't think this is him, having I got to go concentrate on Marvel. I just think there's a lot going on. We're going to talk about what we know of the slate, and if they weren't coming to an agreement, and maybe he is busy with Marvel, day job, and this was his evening hobby. And maybe since again things change. Hey, we're now going this direction. Can you fit into this now? Okay. At the end of the day, I'm very happy because we've been playing this game in Star Wars movie news for 5 years now. a definitive no from the source works for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love a definitive no from the source, or a definitive yes. Anything definitive from the source. Yeah, I think we've talked about this a lot, but as we're heading into talking about the slate and looking forward to the Star Wars films, which I really am, and hoping the best for them, the analogy that I was thinking about over the strike is these development process is natural. That's why it's called development. It's, hey, let's talk. Maybe we're developing. Developing can mean anything from one meeting to a script and a contract, but the film doesn't get made. That's, that's what development is. But because Star Wars in particular, sometimes Marvel, but Star Wars in particular is so popular and people are so excited, every little possibility gets sort of reported and then internalized by some fans as for sure going to happen.
Yeah.
In the analogy I was thinking about, like, I've never really been on the dating apps because I've been married the entire time they've existed. But it's kind of like if you're on a dating app and Toby and Jessica match and they're going out on a date, maybe 2 dates, and then reporting on that, like, Toby and Jessica together, when is the wedding? How many kids do you think they'll have? It's jumping from a dating phase to a what will their grandkids be named? From the perception of development is like dating. A movie being released is at least marriage.
I've talked about the analogy of like food, like, oh, Lucasfilm's going to make a pizza and then they make tacos and you're upset you didn't get the pizza. Yours is hilarious. And I want you to, let's get you 5 minutes at Flappers this weekend. It's hilarious. It's absolutely true. And not without passion, right? Even if you have two friends that meet and you're like, oh, are they, where's this going to go? It comes from a place of love. I think all the discussions around these films generally from our side of things do come from a place of love. But then that love becomes attachment. That's dangerous.
And I think that's the thing is I got no problem and I'm excited by, like we're talk about Sean Levy. There are people I know who love his work and people are so excited for his Star Wars movie. And I got no problem with people saying, oh, I love Sean Levy and Star Wars. I hope they get together just like I hope Toby and Jessica hook up. But I hope not. I don't want it to be like, oh, Luke, did you hear Lucasfilm got together and broke Toby and Jessica up, that they canceled their wedding? Like they were never going to get married. They were just dating. And you decided they were going to get married.
Yeah. You did that.
So nobody broke them up.
You did.
Nobody broke them up.
Mom. It's wonderful. And we can start moving into the slate here, Joseph. Let's see if any thoughts on Feige. But the final thing I will say is, as a longtime Star Wars fan, as someone who has never followed MCU closely, but has always enjoyed my experience in it, who thinks Kevin Feige is a legendary producer who changed the industry in a lot of ways. I'm relieved of this, and not relieved anything about him, anything about my worries about him doing Star Wars. There's just something, again, that definitive no of, hey, let's put this on the shelf, and it's one less thing to have to worry about as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think maybe some writers, directors, producers without as much baggage and relationship to audiences will maybe help audiences focus on the story rather than sort of the pre-narrative or the relationship. Other thing with me about Feige is like, hey, the movie might not have worked out even if everything was going gangbusters with MCU. But just, quick reminder that even before the strikes, when when Chapek went bye-bye and Iger said hello there again, he thought that everything was, that there was too much Marvel and maybe too much Star Wars too. So he had already asked to pump the brakes.
Yeah.
MCU is in the process of folding in all those Fox properties: Deadpool, X-Men, Fantastic Four. I don't want to get into it now, but there's stuff going on with the actor they cast as the main baddie for future films. I think the Marvels was great, and I think there are many reasons that the Marvels struggled at the box office, but that's obviously going to affect Kevin Feige's plate. So I do think this is sort of a fulcrum moment in MCU, and it makes total sense to me that the Star Wars movie would have just been like, hey, it didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
But also it does make total sense of like, Feige's got a lot to concentrate on with MCU.
I like that as a final thought, and we'll put a final thought on the final thought and the final thought here. But yeah, that the idea that he's busy with MCU is maybe taken as can be taken and definitely stated as an overall negative thing, other than what you've just described as there's a lot on his desk every day. And
there is,
yeah.
And people want to portray it as superhero movies are done, MCU is done. Those make flashy headlines. They're worth discussing. But it is natural that a property, a storyline, a sort of unprecedented thing like MCU is going to need to evolve and have some growing pains.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right now, though, we are looking at I guess we'll say film slate, but we have 3 announced films that we got: Star Wars Celebration London and all the joy of there with Mangold. We got the New Jedi Order. We got Filoni and his Filoniverse film. We got all that stuff. Plus we got Taika still in the works. You mentioned Sean Levy. He's got some stuff out there too, still working. He also has a lot of things. There's a lot of people working on Star Wars films who have also a lot of things going, which is why the films are in this unlimited, unannounced time. And also, we can't forget that the Lando series is now being developed by the Glover brothers as a movie project. That kind of sprung up. So there's a lot there. How does that slate feel to us as fans? And we also should talk a little bit of Lando as a movie.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of Lando as a movie. I think we could do, and maybe should do a whole episode just about the streaming realities of maybe they put out too much. Maybe some projects should have been bigger. I really love the Kenobi television show, but I think it would have ultimately been more satisfying at the larger scale and of a movie. So I wonder if them looking at a legacy character like Lando, and major talent like the Glover brothers and going, that should be a movie. So that reconsideration makes total and complete sense to me. What do you think on that one?
Absolutely. And it's just kind of the wave of the industry, and those waves come crashing into the shore pretty fast of, and I don't 100% agree with you in my own statement here, but oopsie with Solo, which again, totally wrong, but oopsie with Solo, let's pull back Kenobi. Oh, a 6-part series. That's great. We go over there. You and I love that series. It means a lot to us, but also it was shot during a troubling time. And let's have a discussion about, workers in the VFX industry and how much time and money they have to complete their project. Because I think some of that showed up on screen and it's not their fault. And then now suddenly here we are again of like, oh, let's take that series and make it a movie. It's just this Harry Chapin, all my life's a circle kind of song lyric. But I think that's important. I think that's okay. And I'm excited. You get 2 very talented creators. Now, there was kind of a switch in the, leadership of this project with all the details, and I just don't want to speculate on that. Also with Donald Glover, you have another person, Kathleen Kennedy has a few times said of, Donald will let us know when he's ready. He's got a lot going on. I'm excited. I'm excited to see it on the big screen or at least see it in a shorter 2-hour chunk on my couch, which is, again, another talk about the industry. I do have a lot of questions about the change in streaming and what's coming forward and how many new series will actually emerge post the Acolyte coming out and the continuation of the show's already out there.
Yeah, we got Skeleton Crew and Acolyte and Mando continuing. And so it's a very, very different time. I pulled this Sean Levy quote too that came out during the strike.
Okay.
This is from Variety on October 23rd. Sean Levy saying, when Kathy Kennedy brought me on board to make a Star Wars movie, her central mandate to me was, I want a Sean Levy movie. I want a story in a tone that reflects you and your taste and what you bring to your movies with a Star Wars story. So I have felt extremely empowered. We are in early days, unfortunately, because the development process was abruptly paused due to the WGA strike. But I feel very empowered to trust my instincts in the development of this story and movie. I think that's a great quote. I think it is very similar to things that Kathleen Kennedy has said. I think it's very similar to things that other filmmakers have said. I tend to believe that it is we really do want these to be personal films. I can't find anywhere, to my knowledge, where Lucasfilm has said anything about this movie. So I definitely consider this in the category of of Toby and Jessica are dating.
It just goes back. I remember even our discussion of when this news broke on this. It was just kind of like a rumor, and I can't remember all the details, but correct me if I'm wrong. It was like a rumor, and then Sean Levy, which is weird. There's Eugene Levy, and then ESPN anchor Steve Levy. I don't know. I have to look up which way he goes. You're right. But when he just tweeted a cheeky confirmation, we always say go to StarWars.com for official news, and I don't think this has ever been on it, but I count it as it's happening in some shape or form. They're getting coffee at least, this project.
Yeah, I have no doubt it's in development. That one irked me because headline straight up ran with this movie confirmed. Like,
yes.
No, the writer-director said he was having talks.
Yeah.
And the headlines just, to me, mangled the truth to the point of lying.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who are just super excited about it. They want this. And it's not everybody's job to be an entertainment journalist and go, well, let me dig for 15 minutes in the middle of my workday. So to me, this one was really about the headlines playing fair.
Mm-hmm.
I think this one is in development, and it might happen, it might not, but I don't think it's been announced in any way by Lucasfilm.
Yeah, and definitely for me, the three announced films is the field on which I'm playing on right now. The other ones, and Lando, I get it. It's there, but like again, your 2037 joke / prediction is not untrue for any of these other projects. If you got 3 or 4, each of these cats seems to have like 3 or 4 things in the works.
Yep,
from Sean Levy, Taika Waititi, and Donald Glover. Like they all have. Joseph, not that every one of Taika's 4 scripts are going to be into movies, but if he's got 4 projects, that's years of development and work and shooting production. So I'm excited for if some of this stuff becomes official. But to your big point earlier, I'm just not worried in a good way. It's fun. I'm just not worried.
Yeah. So for the 3 that were publicly announced at Star Wars Celebration in London, Rey in the New Jedi Order,
mm-hmm.
And then Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi, biblical epic as he's described it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe the Filoni film has been described basically as a New Republic film, with strong implications that it is tying together the stories that have been playing out in the New Republic era on Disney Plus. So Mando, Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, most likely Skeleton Crew.
Mm-hmm.
So out of those 3, how are you feeling about which ones you want, which ones are actually going to happen, and when? Where are you at with those?
I'm still very excited. The feelings in London, and yes, it's easy to sit in an arena and you have a coffee and you're jazzed because you're in London and you get announced and Daisy Ridley comes out. Yeah, of course that's fun, but the excitement's still there for me on that project. Sharmina Beit-Chinoy, everything she has said, and I know you got Stephen Knight working on the script with her. Everything she has said has got me excited for that project. Daisy back has got me excited for that project. Coming out of Dial of Destiny, a film I enjoyed and have enjoyed even more in subsequent viewings. I'm interested to see what Mangold can do with the big themes. We can get into the weeds down the line on another show. I not worries, but I wonder, how much he's paying attention to all the other things. There's going to be a weird, I just have a fear that people are going to be like, well, where's the Mortis gods? And James will be like, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? But his big biblical epic, I'm excited about. The Filoni one, I'm curious about and excited. Don't want anyone to jump on me for that. I'm curious, especially from where we're going, because we still have so much to be revealed in the shows. So I think my excitement will build on that once we get to Mando 4. If there is Ahsoka season 2, Skeleton Crew, which we still don't even have an official announcement yet, that kind of got quietly pulled back, and there's some quiet rumors that maybe soon, but we don't have anything official. So that's you didn't ask for me to rank them, but I'm still excited in that order.
No, I partially asked because I am excited in an order. I'm still very, very most excited for myself personally on Rey and the Jedi Order. Yep. I just think I love the character of Rey. Yep. I think yes, it's revisiting legacy characters. Yes, it's the Jedi, but there's so much about it that's new to me for the big screen. Mm-hmm. The existing Star Wars trilogies are coming of age stories. And then there's always been a hunger for, well, now that Vader's Vader, can we see him just being Vader on the big screen?
Mm.
now that Luke's a Jedi Master, what's he up to? And you got a million books and comics to fill that in now. And this is Rey's story to become the Jedi of that era and the Jedi Master of that era. So to see a film that's like, now this is the journey of, she has completed her coming of age story. And now this is a little bit like the Kenobi show was a coming of a middle-age story of, and what is it like to pass it on and to be a sort of a parent, a mentor of a new generation with the focus on that character, possibly. Ever since in 1983, when Yoda said, pass on what you have learned, I have wanted to see that story more robustly on the big screen. Again, endless books and comics dealing with that.
Yeah.
But to see the philosophy behind the building of a new Jedi Order, and from everything that Sharmeen Obed-Chinoy has said about the project, it feels to me like a project that is going to look at the Jedi from a positive perspective of like, yes, they're flawed. Yes, it's dangerous to have a group of super-powered space wizards who go, actually, we'll decide what justice is and we'll implement it. Of course, there's danger in that. But it seems from everything she said, it's like there's this new group rising up that's going to look out for the little people.
Yeah.
The Jedi Order is going to make it so you can't walk on the little people. And of course, there are forces who don't want that. We've had a lot of the fall of the Jedi and the flaw of the Jedi. And to see on the big screen, the Jedi are the heroes and somebody else doesn't want there to be heroes. Sounds so good to me. So I'm real excited for that.
And you take a look at the news headlines of the day, from labor unrest to situations that are just absolutely horrendous and tragic in the world. That's one of the themes of helping those trampled underfoot by the systems and the oppressors and those in power. And to have that in Star Wars. And one of the things you got me excited about here again is, you and I both love Rey. I love the character of Rey so much, but I also love what she represents to so many other folks, something you and I have discussed too, from Force Awakens on, and we can play the calendar game a little bit in this discussion of, again, say you're 10, say you're 12 in 2015. Rey is your Jedi, and she's part of a core cast for you that you grew up with. And this film comes out in 2026 is still kind of, that's the slate spot right now. This is, I'm happy for me and you as Star Wars fans, but I'm happy for that generation that doesn't have to go through what we did, which is, again, not the books and Zahn and all great stuff. Got it. But imagine if at Comic-Con 1988, George had come out and been like, and here's Mark Hamill. He's coming back to this role, and we're going to redo things. And I'm not saying I think Lucas should have done that. Just imagine that. Just imagine that alternate reality and the excitement, and that you could experience Han, Luke, and Leia if they could convince Harrison to come back during this. I don't know. I'm making The Fugitive. Like, it would have been.
The Fugitive is the example I was going to use too. I don't know what it was.
You go to that era of time, right? It's so exciting, and to, that for so many people that aren't us that will get to experience that. I'm excited for them. And then, oh, by the way, knock on wood, I'm still gonna be around. I'm gonna be excited for that too. And yes, there's other characters. I really do hope we get more Finn. I really hope John Boyega can explore that character more, and maybe on a level that he wanted to or wants to now. Oscar Isaac, yes, I'm a big Oscar Isaac fan, but I think he could at times it seems he could give or take Poe right now. He loves what he did, but all that, I'm going with that.
But he's been up and down with it.
He came back for Moon Knight, which was a shock for he'd come back into the Disney system for that, but he did it in his way. So if it's right, but anyways, so it's an entire era, but Rey represents so much of what you're talking about. And I'll end my rant here with, if it is a rant, but what you're talking about, those themes are timeless, but they're important now, and they're important for the generations continuing to grow up. And I'm excited to explore that.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying. And imagining, somebody being 12 when The Force Awakens came out, and, they're going to, 2026, maybe they're 23. And they're taking their first steps. I've talked a lot about it. I've just been lucky that my age has kind of lined up with Obi-Wan. So I've got to have Obi-Wan as little pal going like, here's what it's like when you're this age. Here's what it's like. And I wish that for other people via Rey. The next up for me is the New Republic versus a threat. I'm going to guess it's Thrawn, after Ahsoka in particular.
Yeah, seems clear.
I really, really, really want this New Republic movie. I want it. I want it bad, Ken. and partially just for the storytelling and because I'm excited. But I got to admit that this was one of the things that was difficult for me with the Ahsoka show was I got bumped out of the story. I got bumped out of the fantasy by the business realities. And I don't like to be, I don't want to be, I just failed. I tried and I failed at not letting it affect me, but it affected me. And in particular, what it was is there's so much I enjoyed about Ahsoka, but the whole time I'm watching it, particularly the first half when it really is about the threat of will Thrawn return, and kind of watching it knowing, well, this isn't going to be Thrawn's whole story. Yeah. So how much of Thrawn's story are we going to get? And I love an interconnected universe, but I think I am having this strong desire for chapters of stories to finish.
Yes.
And if there are however many seasons that Favreau has up his sleeve for The Mandalorian, if the Skeleton Crew is a part of the puzzle, if Filoni feels like he really needs an Ahsoka season 2 to set up this film, like I'm concerned about the business reality of the dance between streaming and what's on films, that parts of the story are going to be left dangling. And it has been the legacy of Ahsoka as a character for audiences to be left dangling with parts of her story unresolved. Right. And I'm so fascinated with a lot of the world building that was done in Ahsoka about the state of the New Republic and different factions within the New Republic. And I loved Thrawn. I'm happy that he's back to cause chaos. And I just want the story to finish. And if it's going to finish that movie, please let's get to the finish line, because I want a completed story, not be left dangling and not be distracted by every Disney Plus season of New Republic storytelling going, our business reality is going to allow this to be a completed story? Or are we going to be left dangling for years and decades?
Yeah, think of the end of Clone Wars, indeed, right? Before this miracle Clone Wars saved thing that happened. That we got. Yeah, I'm with you, too. We'll be discussing Ahsoka in more detail soon here on the show. But yeah, I'm with you on that. And by the way, it's not, I don't even know, correct me if I'm wrong, too. It's not like a criticism. It's just a feeling. It's just a reality. The tragic loss of Ray Stevenson. And
heartbreaking,
and it hung over for me too. Of like, oh, is this wrapping up? Is he going? Is he being sliced in two in that character? No, there's a wonderful, beautiful open ending thing with this character, and now they have to deal with that, and you can't help that. So that's not a criticism. You can't help that, but the realities were there for me in this series, and some of that too. So to your point, yeah, I'm excited to get it to a film.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I just think the landscape has changed a little bit from when Disney Plus was really hot, Mando was really hot. Yeah. To is I going to come in and go, no. I mean, one of the many factors with the Marvels is that it was the first film that pulled strongly from the Disney Plus shows. Right. Two of the main characters, having seen the film, I think you can entirely understand the film, the plot, the emotions, who the characters are without ever seeing those Disney Plus shows, Ms. Marvel and WandaVision. But there's no doubt that it's richer if you did. And people are going to be looking for lots of different reasons to explain the box office failure of the Marvels. Yeah. And that's the businessy stuff that makes me nervous about, Disney looking at this and going, oh, we thought it was going to be a monster hit maker to build love for characters on the small screen and then give them a big movie. But now we're going to take this lesson, true or not, from the Marvels, that doesn't work. And we're going to slam the brakes.
Yeah.
That's my concern with this movie, with the New Republic wrap it all up film.
We're going to have this discussion in the second half of the show of Star Wars in different forms, so to speak. And that's just the reality. I mean, that's where I get really grumpy about discussion around some of these movies, like the Marvels movies. Yeah, I haven't seen one. One of the reasons I haven't seen, I don't need to go. I know I don't need to go to the theater. I know I could wait, right? And that's part of the discussion. That one of the characters was introduced in a wonderful, well-received show by those that watched it that was left out to die opposite the Kenobi show, a legacy Star Wars character. There's those kind of discussions around it. And I think that's some of it too. And we can get into that. It might shock some folks. I know Star Wars fans that don't have Disney Plus that are just now sitting down to that Mando show. Or I heard Boba Fett was bad. I didn't watch it. Is that true, Kent? Like, these are conversations I have in my real life, off of the fake podcast life we live, barely. No, and that's just, it's just the reality, man. It's the reality. So, yeah, interesting discussion to put a pin in there. Where you at with Mangold? You and I are both positive on Dial of Destiny. He's an interesting, intense cat, but also I think has a funny persona around him too. I didn't, as I've joked before, loved a lot of his films. Never knew it was him directing them. Girl Interrupted, 3:10 to Yuma. But I've become more and more a fan of that film. But curious where you're at with the final one there.
I absolutely loved Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I saw it in the theater 3 times. I'm gonna buy it on physical media. I love the hell out of that movie. So creatively, just as somebody to sit down and watch a movie, I really hope the Mangold film happens. I'm not really holding it close to my heart because I'm afraid of loss. I think out of the 3 that got announced, I think it was a brilliant announcement of we're looking toward the past, present, and the future. We got a New Republic movie building out of the television shows. We're going into the farthest future of Star Wars we ever have on the big screen with Rey and continuing her story. Now we're going to go back super far in time. It made sense, but it is the one most easily dropped from the slate, I think. It's a ways off. And I think that there is this problem right now. It's always been there in Hollywood, but it seems to be ramping up to an untenable place where the powers that be want to hire people who are hot.
Yes.
Which means they have all sorts of projects in development. Because it's like, we're going to hire somebody with one project in development. They're not very hot. So they want people who are juggling a bunch of stuff. They want to announce somebody right after they came off of a big success or right after they had a really good relationship with the studio, like Mangold clearly did with Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
But then our society is reacting so fast, so hot, so cold that that's the Taika Waititi phenomenon of pop culture put him on the tallest pillar we could find after Ragnarok. And they couldn't get a Star Wars movie out in time before pop culture pulled him right down. And I don't think that people put Mangold on a pillar for Logan, which I agree with.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's being pulled off as violently.
Yeah.
But he's stumbling in terms of the pop culture, is he hot or not?
Right.
Popularity game. All this is business. This has nothing to do with creativity to me.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the story I want to see. This is analysis of our weird pop culture world and how it intersects with the industry. The cycle of put him on the pillar, pull him down has never been faster than it is now. And it's a relatively recent phenomenon, I think, that we do it so incredibly strongly with directors and screenwriters as well as with actors.
Yeah. The age of the director opening pictures versus the movie star, right? That's part of the people and me that have discussed it. No, I agree with you on that. And I always forget Logan. Logan was a Mangold film. There's
real good.
I watched the documentary on Indie, which is I forget which version I have that it popped up, and I know we got the Harrison doc coming too, which is another story we didn't really put in there. But we got the Harrison Ford doc coming as well very shortly. Mangold very clearly has a great relationship with Kathleen Kennedy, Disney, Lucasfilm. Even recent comments about George and his involvement with some advice on script and dailies and stuff like that, looking at that with Indy. So I don't say this to stoke any kind of internet drama, in which Mangold would be the first to tweet me and go, "You're an idiot." I don't think there's a danger of him flipping the table and saying, "I'm out of here." But to my even joke that I made, of he wants to go tell his story. And if he does come up against something, and well, we got this planet Peridia, and have you considered this and the Mortis gods and that? And he's going to be like, yeah. But here's what I want to do. And he's strong-minded, as he should be, as all directors are. Hey, this is what I want to do. I'm with you. There's a fear of loss that might be unfounded, completely unfounded. But we have to admit, there's a lot of the missteps, a lot of what you're saying. Let's get the hottest names. Dan and Dave, you're doing good. Gulp. Though a lot of that was Netflix came in the back door and was like, would you like a $300 million deal? Or would you like to face scorn from another fandom? Got it. All right, cool. Patty Jenkins, all these names. And I don't fault anyone there at Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, or below or above. Go and get those names. By all accounts, it was Bob Iger that said, Lord and Miller are going to direct that Lawrence Kasdan script. This is what I want, because they're hot, and they are hot, and they're still hot. But I'm with you. It's okay to admit that we might have a little fear. I'm interested in getting to that era, beyond High Republic, beyond Old Republic, and going to the Alpha Republic, if you want to call it, the beginning. I'm so excited, and I think he's the guy to do it right now, based on Dial of Destiny and some of the other things you're talking about, including Girl Interrupted, quite frankly. But yeah, I like your point. I hadn't really factored that into my excitement, Joseph, so thank you. There's a fear of loss I must deal with.
Yes, but we must deal with it well, as Star Wars has taught us.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Any final big thoughts there? That's the three announced.
I think that's a pretty good look at the slate, and I am happy to save other thoughts for the future.
That's right. Well, I think we're so excited to get back to talking Star Wars news. This could be the first 4-hour episode of ForceCenter if we're not careful. So we'll wrap up this first half of our news discussion. We'll come back after a quick break with the second half. But before we do, as always, we have a ForceCenter Recommends, an audiobook we think you should try out on us. And Joseph, we've got a Star Wars one again.
We do. Before the strike happened, we ended up in a cycle where we were not getting to the books, and we would recommend the same book. So I've said this book 1,000 million times. We are recommending The Path of Deceit. It's the first book in the second phase of the High Republic. When we started recommending it, it was brand new. It's now not brand new, and the third phase of the High Republic has started. But I wanted to recommend it because I finally cracked it open. I'm about halfway through it, and I'm really enjoying it. Just really interesting, exciting stuff about different perspectives on the way the Force is used. So I'm really enjoying that. If you want to check out the High Republic Phase 2, Path of Deceit,
do so by downloading your free audiobook today at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. All right, there it is. Quick break. On the other side, more Star Wars news. Welcome back to the ForceCenter show. That's right. Take a look at Star Wars news, some pop culture, life itself. It all comes just pouring down into from waterfalls everywhere into our Star Wars discussion pool here. Joseph, let's get to this discussion we kind of hinted at. Star Wars in different forms. Some of this is confirmed. Some of this is speculation from good sources, at least within this particular genre of coverage. During the strike, it was revealed that we will be getting physical media releases for The Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 in mid-December, just in time for your holiday wishes. These releases will include never-before-seen featurettes and extras, and, of course, the packaging. There's, I think, a postcard in it, and they're just going to look good on your shelf there. But right now,
there's a child in them, I think, an actual physical child for you to raise.
Jon Favreau pops out and goes, "Do you want to make a Cuban sandwich? A Cuban? I got you." I actually would love that if each one included a different recipe from one of his food truck episodes. Great. Right now, those are the only two releases that seem to be confirmed, but online personalities who, again, concentrate on the physical media game have claimed that The Mandalorian Season 3 and or Season 1 and The Book of Boba Fett could be making their way to shelves or your digital shopping carts soon. And again, not surprising if we're going this route. General thoughts on this news, Joseph, which I imagine for your reaction that I can now see is excitement. Exciting thoughts.
This is some of the news I have been wanting, and this was one of the pieces of news during the strike that made me just go, damn it, I want to talk about that. So I'm happy to finally be here and be able to talk about it. There's two things that happened during the strike. The announcement of this physical media, the confirmed Mando season 1 and season 2, and the hopeful others. So there was that news. And Disney Plus actually broadcasting the shows, making them available on digital streaming, and not at midnight, but at a staggered prime time, 6 p.m. in the American West Coast, 9 p.m. American United States East Coast. I feel like there is this thing. I have this instinct to go common sense decisions because I don't know if they are common sense, but anyway, but for me, I feel like there's a balance between exclusivity and accessibility. And I think that it's interesting that these are both things that are happening as Iger comes back and feels like all in on Disney Plus. We need to watch out for all in on Disney Plus. It can't be our absolutely only business model. But I feel like the existence of physical media, airing these shows at a time where it's easier for more people to see them and talk about them. Those are both to me about accessibility, that we know we have something in value, not only in Star Wars, but we have something of value in rabid, hardcore, all-in Star Wars fans. And I feel like it's got to be behind the paywall of Disney Plus. You got to stay up until midnight or get up at 6 a.m. or change your internal body schedule to see these before they get spoiled. That's all a focus on hardcore fans who will pay whatever, do whatever schedule-wise to see it first. In both the physical media and the more reasonable to me timed releases are an acknowledgement that the hardcore fans of any fandom, they're like your front wave, but you need a back wave. And I think that these are both things to make Star Wars more friendly, more accessible to the general public. And that's why it means so much to me.
I really agree with what you're saying there. There's a lot. We spent more than half a year, 2023, hearing about what are the numbers for streaming. They're probably not as good as you think. Some are shockingly low. That there's probably podcasts talking about shows, not necessarily Star Wars ones, but there's podcasts talking about shows that have more views than the shows, right? Like this is some of the stuff that kind of you've heard these discussions, and it's just the reality of it there too. And you can make it to exclusive. You make me think, I got to be honest, I don't know the ending of this story, but back in my public safety days, like shoe releases were a big problem because companies like Nike would say, new line of shoes coming out. They're at these stores. Each store would get 30 to 50. The staff would take 30 of them and leave 20. And you'd have all these people showing up at midnight to get these shoes. And it wasn't average Joe. It was groups of people that would send out people across the state with list of shoes to get at any cost, and often at any cost ended up being violent. And these are the people that would tear down walls. I had 4 of my officers trampled in a riot over shoes one night. And I remember all the owners, the property owners, the mall owners, everyone across the nation kind of was going to these shoe companies going, you got to do something about this. You've made it too exclusive. You're hurting your brand. I don't know. I left the business, thank God. And I don't know how it ended up. And I don't know if and the sneaker world is a big profitable world, but you're making me think of it where there was, it was, you can't forget it's too exclusive. Not everyone can afford. What's my Disney Plus now? Over $20? These are trying times. I feel like Dusty Rhodes giving his plumber speech in the 80s in wrestling. So I like that this is a move towards things outside of it. I want to talk about, hey, actually having it and it's yours. Like my copy of Dogma on DVD. It's mine. I can watch it.
No one can take your dogma.
No monster can take it from me as they have Kevin Smith. So I think it's all good, and that's an interesting. And I don't consider. I don't know where you go with the business of it. And we've just gone through a very contentious business part, and you and I have some maybe more negative Iger thoughts than we had in the past, especially about his sweaters. But I don't think this is a backpedaling. I think this is an adjustment, and it all leads to more money, which is part of why this wreck was happening. But anyways, I don't want to go down that. I don't want to get on that yacht and go down that river. But But
the entire industry went too all in on streaming and are backpedaling to other models of ads and all that kind of thing, on streaming. And anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's what you're talking about, the moving up of the shows. For us, we got a little West Coast bias and privilege. Having dinner and watching Ahsoka was different than even 9 p.m. I also was laughing at the prime time. You're so right. It's different prime times, and how that, for me, prime time at 6 p.m. is news and a syndicated game show. And then 9 p.m. but 8 is the funny sitcom, and 9 p.m. is the procedural cop drama. That's hilarious old school stuff there. But I thought that was just a positive move too. I know you did as well.
I thought it was just fabulous. It's just I really, really enjoyed having the normal ritual that I would have at midnight at 6 o'clock, and having more time to process and think. And and that was even without us doing the reviews, but I'll really enjoy it when it comes to review time.
And Alex and Molly Damon are somewhere yelling at us going, try waking up at 4 a.m., losers. Yeah. Any final thoughts on that section there?
No, I was just also going to say, I think leading with the Mandalorian, those first 2 seasons that were so beloved, the first season, I think in particular, because it was incredibly accessible, because you really didn't need to know much to get, emotionally distant armor daddy protects cutest creature you've ever seen. It's super, super emotionally accessible. So I think it makes sense in their popularity to lead with them. I also, there have been rumors that Book of Boba Fett is coming. It also makes sense to me to get all of the shows that might add up to that Filoni New Republic film, to get them out from behind the paywall as soon as possible for as long as possible, to build interest in a movie that's going to bring all of these threads together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it makes sense on the choice. Other than that, it was also just the first one out of the gate, but it's going to look good on the shelves. I'm looking across my shelf right now. I think I don't have Rise of Skywalker on physical media. Every other one I do, and I'm looking at it now. And that's, as a Star Wars fan, whether or not I'm even going to watch that show, I still will probably watch it on Disney Plus. I'm going to watch it again. I just want it because we have that insatiable urge to want it and put it on a shelf.
Yeah, no, I physically want it. Yeah.
There is more. Additionally, the Star Wars films, and I think in the story that includes the Clone Wars movie at one point, will be appearing on Disney's linear networks and Turner networks following a big negotiation, actually kind of a renegotiation for some of the rights with Warner Brothers Discovery's Turner networks. This deal actually started in October. This is, when those movies, you're flipping the channel and the movies are there. This is what I call hotel viewing. When you get to the hotel, you turn on the TV and just go, what can I watch while I'm getting ready for the show or taking a nap? So Joseph, general thoughts on this, the immediate or long-term future of streaming could factor in this conversation. And are you excited to watch Attack the Clones again on TV? Which you've been able to for a while, but now maybe solo and something like that.
Yeah, no, I think linear still has a lot of power, because I think it is not everyone can afford streaming. It's really expensive. People are always shocked to learn the numbers of like Tubi and the other and Freevee, the free ones with ads that have always been free. People are shocked to learn the power of those, because not everyone can afford streaming. So I think linear still has power. I think there's the people who still like to have I flop down on the couch and whatever's on, or you're in a hotel room or whatever. My biggest thought for this is, I wonder how much of an impact linear traditional television viewings are going to have for the Star Wars films that are not as beloved. People love Rogue One, but the up and down on the sequel trilogy, and certainly up and down on Solo. A lot of people, I think, who still just general audience just heard it flopped. Some guy who wasn't Harrison Ford played Han Solo, and nobody liked it, and they've never watched it. Linear TV is not as powerful as it used to be, but there are endless examples of things like this. It is a different day, but It's a Wonderful Life became a classic when various corporate decisions were made when we were children, Ken, to just start playing it all the time. And within a couple years, it was this weird memory hole thing where people are like, yes, the beloved classic, It's a Wonderful Life, came out in the 40s, and everyone has loved it ever since. And so the natural order of things is that it has always been on television. It's a Wonderful Life became a classic and rewrote its own history from being played on television. Linear television is not at the same place, but I think it could do something for Solo in the sequel trilogy.
This is a great point. First of all, wonderful thought to bring in It's a Wonderful Life in that story. I almost want like a Scrimshaw history video on that. Well, it's fascinating. Also, this wonderful Christmas movie that is just political all the way through is another discussion to have. The business side, you look, Disney, Warner Brothers Discovery, Zaslav, Iger. These are names we've all been screaming at for a while, and that's not necessarily going away. This is like a $350 million deal, and I'm not putting the strikes behind us right now in terms of the impact of the discussion, but I also want to acknowledge that we're trying to kind of move forward and look positively at this stuff going on. And I love what you're saying. This is the Spielberg War of the Worlds for me. I didn't see it in the theater. I heard it was bad. I heard the ending sucked. And then it was played on HBO every Saturday and Sunday morning, back to back for like 3 months. And I watched it every single time. And I love that film.
It's great.
I love it. I love it. And sure, point here and there. So the thing, whatever. I love it. But that could be Solo. That could be Rogue One. That could be Last Jedi. Could be Rise of Skywalker. And that's I didn't even factor that into this discussion until you mentioned it. So thanks for bringing that up. That is part of this too. And yeah, you're right. Normal quote normal TV, the old cable box, whatever we have, whatever we grew up with, it's changed. I just recently resubscribed to YouTube TV Live. I told you all I'm kind of watching a little bit more sports on a Sunday morning, and you kind of need that for it. And so I swiped the credit card. I treated myself to like 1 or 2 months to see if I like it. Joseph, I can't tell you, outside of just sitting and watching football while I do admin work is a fun Sunday morning for me. I can't tell you, I'm actually oddly having fun with commercial breaks to get up and go to the bathroom or re-warm my coffee, and then just flipping and going, oh, that's on. I'll watch that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's how we were raised, but it's a warm, comfortable feeling.
I think that there are times when humans can desire agency, and there are times where humans desire exploration, which is a real fancy way to say we used to feel kind of locked in because it's like, what's on? Is there anything good on? Right. If you're more our age, there can almost be a burden of choice of everything is a choice. And there's something fun about what's on. It's this scene from Solo. Oh, I watched the rest of Solo again.
Yeah. Oopsie. Yeah. Oopsie. I sat down to have a snack and I watched the whole movie. Also, like, look, man, you're great at themes, but you just put a theme to remote control searching, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Beautiful. So there you go. That's that deal. Like I said, start October. Look for that. We'll see the effect. And again, we're talking about things that who knows, maybe it might not affect things, but it'll be options. And there's a lot going on. The industry, in case you haven't been paying attention, is changing rapidly. And some of that includes taking a step or two back from everything that's been changing. But while we're buying Blu-rays, Joseph, let's get some toys. Let's go down that aisle and get some toys and maybe a book or two. A lot of Star Wars toys and figures and collectibles were announced during the strikes. I would say our relationship to collecting Star Wars is on a smaller scale in the past, though you probably still collect more than I do now. But where we are now with collecting Star Wars overall, and I want to get into the figures that were announced and what you're excited about.
Yeah. No, I am still an avid collector. I think it's just a part of my personality. I am obsessive, and I like physical things that represent things we love. Going back just very briefly to those physical discs. I think it is different to own something and to hold something. It is about people who don't have streaming. I can buy Mando and sit down and watch it with my dad.
Yeah.
But there's also the like, I want it on my shelf.
Yeah.
And I want them to encourage. Capitalism is often voting with your dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to make Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I'm going to buy everything they put out to convince them to make Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
So my collecting urges are strong, powerful, borderline dangerous. I must find balance. In action figures in particular, I'm running out of space, so I have to really, really start to make hard choices.
Yeah.
Difficult, terrible choices. So that's where I'm at with it. Is I absolutely love it. Have a physical reality that I need to deal with of the space in my home.
I hate when physical realities creep into your Star Wars collection. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I've documented some of my changes, and I might be even entering a period of time where I'm selling some of my things with a little bit of a broken heart. But there's reality to it. But all that to say, I still take those turn down the toy aisles in the store. It's still part of my DNA. I'm here for oat milk, blueberries, and what Black Series figure is maybe on discount. So I actually got really excited about some of the ones announced, and there's some great from the Hasbro PulseCon. They always announce some good ones, and a lot from Ahsoka. We can run down the list if you want, but as someone who really did love Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, and have those characters and have the designs look good. I know there's a controversy that Baylan Skoll is short, maybe even shorter than some of the other figures in the 6-inch line, and maybe there's a scaling issue. Maybe they'll correct that. But just to have
Short King, that's fine.
Yeah, just to have that beard on my shelf to honor the late great Ray Stevens, but also what I feel some of the best facial hair ever captured on film. That'll be good, and I definitely want to get your thoughts on that. But I will say that the other line, the Phantom Menace classics that were announced, in a lot of different scales, I think, right? But the 6-inch, you got Padme. We'll talk a little bit more about Padme in the assault on the Theed Capitol building there, and then the Anakin, the Jake Lloyd Anakin. Great sculpt, everything about it. I even with me kind of dealing with some bigger pictures of where I am in life as a fan and all those things, this is the proof that it's so deep into my heart to me, because this popped up and I went, well, that's a buy. No question, it's a buy.
Yeah, no, and it's great when that feeling happens. I think one of the things that they've been doing a little bit better, that Hasbro's been doing with their lines, is they got so many of the Ahsoka figures out much closer to the actual release of the show.
Yes.
Which they've really been struggling with. Did you love that character in Mando? Well, see you in 2 years.
Yep.
And they're not making as many figures, as many different characters. I'll share some thoughts on that. But getting the Ahsoka figures out was great. And actually, you reminded me when you're talking about going to the Target toy aisle, I got to share this story because it's a good picture where I'm at. So I've got a lot of figures that are going to stay in my home, but I have a lot that I need to put in plastic bins and put in my storage space. That's like a couple blocks away. They're not far at all. I got my car, Ken. I drove to Target with the explicit purpose of buying some bins that I have checked, I have sized, I have tested. They're going to be comfortable homes for my friends while they're away from me. And the first place that I went when I went into Target was the toy aisle. And they had the vintage deluxe Sabine Wren with Lothcat. And I was like, well, that's a buy. So even on my trip to buy multiple bins, because I don't have enough room for action figures, I still bought Sabine. And I put her in the bin, yep, it works. She's going to stay on my shelf for a little while because she's new. The new ones get some shelf priority for a while.
You can rotate.
Some of the older ones got to go in the bin. But I think I think that immediacy is really powerful, and it's great that they're swinging around to doing some characters that they haven't in Black Series and Vintage line. The Dooku's a big thing. People have been asking for Dooku. They've put out non-shameful Black Chrysanthemum because they rushed out that one based on the Chewie mold, and it was just like the hey, come on, guys. Like back in the day, people our age, we accepted the crumbs we got. I didn't care that Luke Skywalker looked like He-Man in 1995 because I was just happy to get Luke Skywalker. So I bought 8 buff Luke Skywalkers. I'm not buying shameful Chrysanthemum, who's been on some unhealthy carb diet suddenly, and you made an action figure of it. Not doing it. So they made non-shameful Chrysanthemum. They made Dooku, which people have been really asking for. Yeah. Starkiller's not really my jam, but they put out Starkiller stuff that people have been asking for and are really excited about. So I think there's been some positive trends in the toys, which is going to make it even harder for me to not collect as many.
I'm looking at the Dooku right now, and man, that's a great sculpt.
Fabulous.
It looks great.
Fabulous.
Well, no. And by the way, I totally sympathize with you, and like you're making me think of when I was in 6th grade, and I knew it was time to put away my stuffed animals. And I couldn't do it, and I had to come up with a story while they were going on vacation. It's real. It's real.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Trust me, because I have a storage shed in my backyard, and I sometimes just go in there and I open up the boxes, and it's like, what am I going to do with this? But also, I remember when I bought that Krennic. Oh, what a day! It's a thing.
They're tied to memories, yeah, and for me, having to make choices it can also be fun because they had a big announcement of a lot of Ahsoka characters, Chopper, Krennic, and it was just like, I don't care, I am all about Huyang. So that was our mutual friend Ken Plume was like, you getting this, you getting that, and it's like, I can only get one right now, and I choose Huyang.
Yeah.
Sorry, Krennic. Sorry, Chopper. I choose Huyang. That can be its own journey in terms of the action figures being sort of like symbols of what we love, of really having to do a ranking.
Yeah.
And Huyang won my ranking.
I wouldn't expect it to be any other way for you. I mean, you got kind of Tenet in figure form in Star Wars. That's amazing. That's amazing. Talk a little bit about the views of our state of the collecting and the time we have here. And I'm not an expert. This is where you have much more insight on our buddy Ken Plume, which we have reached. I've told Ken, I think we've reached the limit of his name references for a couple weeks on the show. But I play Fortnite with Ken so often. We're always chatting. Our old buddy Mike Black, who used to come on the show, and will again, more plugged into this figure world than I am. But at one point that was brought up when reading this article here on Gizmodo that the Phantom Menace Padme, it's only the 2nd time she's appeared in the Black Series line. And that other time was pretty recent as well. So I guess there's a question, Joseph, about are the old issues still there? Can it change? You mentioned that they're just, the realities, it's not all nefarious. It's sometimes the reality in the changing world and who these are being made for. And again, bringing in our buddy Ken, who has a show called Force 5, where he brings on guests to talk about Star Wars, their favorite Star Wars toys. He has told me, he's expressed, it's sometimes hard to get guests because it's not just that it's another white male that collects. They're another white male that's like, everybody hates that Rey, right? And kind of sometimes it's a dominant thread in this collecting world. That's a general sweep through it, to be clear, but that's kind of what I have to say on it. But I'll, concede the talking baton to you, who has more experience in this.
Yeah, so when you and I did our series of ranking our favorite action figures from lots of different lines, we used this website, which was called Jedi Business at the time, now Galactic Figures. And I don't know if it's a page or a Facebook group, but I'm in that. I follow along with Galactic Figures Facebook presence.
Right.
And so it's been really great to read lots of comments and learn a little bit more about the business from people who really know it, and also just see how fan discussions happen and get a little sort of temperature on what different people want. And some of the things that I've learned that I think are factors in this is Hasbro has things that sell. Cool villains sell.
Yeah.
Original and prequel series main characters sell. Mando variations sell. In general, troopers sell. Then also Hasbro is doing everything that they can think of to an absurd level of creativity and shame to repaint figures, especially armored figures, which are already popular. So, I bought a figure out of wanting it, but also being amazed by the hubris of it. They put out a series of Boba Fett exclusives that were extra expensive, that were comic book variations. So Boba Fett figures that I own multiples of already, but painted a little different. And there was one that was original Empire Strikes Back comic book adaptation Boba Fett. It's just back in the day, they're just like, the colors aren't entirely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So then the action figures just painted the colors that he was in the 1980 comic book. So they have these window of things that they know sell.
Mm-hmm.
They stretch as much as they can by repainting and re-releasing characters, which, every once in a while one hits, but fans are mostly real frustrated by that, but accept it as a financial reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then they're also in the point where with the current lines, vintage, retro, and Black Series, they can only put out so many new characters.
Yeah.
Whereas when they had the fewer points of articulation, the 5 points of articulation, classic ones that we grew up with and rebooted, those figures are cheaper to make, so they can pump out more, and you can army build, and they can put out the weirdos, and they can take a loss on a background weirdo if a main character sells and all that kind of thing. With the current lines, vintage, retro, Black Series, there isn't room for as many characters because they can only make so many new molds per year.
Gotcha.
So I think all that stuff is the business reality. And then I think it's a really like a chicken and an egg thing of, yep, it is true that a lot of the collectors do seem to be, people who are going to buy some of the standards. And if they grew up with the prequels, hey, they love a Padme figure. But I've definitely read lots of comments where people don't need any more of those Rays or those Jins or, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
There's also so there's some of the dynamics of are women action figures going to sell as well.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a deep reluctance to make more sequel figures. There are main characters of Rise of Skywalker that they have not put out at all. Or in one line, but not the other. And I see debates going back and forth of people being like, I didn't even love that film, but for God's sakes, it's a main character with an outfit we've never gotten action figure of. To me, they haven't made even training Luke and Leia.
Right.
And for me, I do think that there is a question of, like I said, would they buy them? Would people buy them if they put them out, or are they training people to not want those kind of figures because they're so rarely available?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not an expert. That's me just wondering aloud about the state of things.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate it's what I would describe as a 360-degree look at it, where there's some hardcore issues. And this is something I was trying to get into some of the Marvel's MCU discussions and other parts of my life, where there's a lot of factors that movie might not work. And some of the factors are that it's a multi-woman led film by a wonderful, talented director, Nia DaCosta, who faced some scorn that I don't think other directors would have faced. And those are some of the issues, and they're big issues. And I want to always point at them and talk about it, but that doesn't mean there isn't other issues. And I think what you're describing is the full 360 degrees. The industry has changed, and it's hard. When I turn the corner and I see 4 Revas and 2 Landos sitting there, and that's the only ones warming the pegs, it breaks my heart in a lot of different ways. And then I go, you know what? I'm going to buy them. Ooh, $30. I need milk. It's just, it's the full picture. So I really appreciate your insights on it.
It really is. And one of the recent announcements in a line that people were really excited about was Force Awakens Finn.
Yeah, it's on there.
Who that figure has been released back when they were doing the 3 3/4 Black Series.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting to see people's reaction from, we've already got this figure, to I don't want sequel figures, to other people being like, we need more sequel figures, to other people saying, but we've never had this character from this major film on the vintage card, and half of us are collecting the vintage card. So you saw a lot of opinions, and you definitely did see the subtext of it is also a question of representation, and people having both positive and upsettingly negative reactions to it. So there's no denying that is a part of it.
Well, these figures are out or rolling out, and I'm sure some of them will find their ways to our shelves. I still got a 6-inch, that 6-inch Jar Jar over here. That Jar Jar needs that young Annie next to him. I'm going to complete that film tableau. I can't wait for that. Final story, and also if there's anything else we want to swing through, Joseph, by all means, toss it out there. But this is one that I know you're particularly excited about. And then you kind of jogged my memory that it was revealed over the last 6 months or so that there's a new novel on the way from Jonathan Jackson Miller, who's definitely been in and around Star Wars for years. We'll talk about that. It's a book called The Living Force, or Star Wars The Living Force, about a year out from Phantom Menace, leading into the Phantom Menace, following the members of the Jedi Council. And you're right, I'm excited about this. And then I owe Jonathan Jackson Miller an apology, and this is where I'll bring it up. But take it away. What are you liking about this?
Well, I love the Jedi. I love the prequel era. I know these Jedi have been explored in books and comics from the EU that I have not read as much. So full acknowledgement to people who know the Jedi Council of Phantom Menace well from the EU. I do not. And in 1999, I wanted every one of them action figures. I want to know everything about them. And this book has such a great setup that Qui-Gon is upset with the Jedi Council for spending too much time on Coruscant and losing touch with what the galaxy is really like. And that we're going to get chapters, perspectives from all the council members. It's been the great thing about the High Republic is really treating the Jedi as individuals, having the room that you have in a book in publishing to go into their heads and differentiate lots of different Jedi. And to see that with these characters, with Yaddle, with Jarl Poof, to make long neck, wavy head guy, not a joke.
Yeah.
But a full character. And again, I know other people have experienced it, but I'm so excited for that. And then real quick, I really enjoyed the Kenobi novel that this author wrote. And he also wrote New Dawn, but he hasn't been around in a while. And it's just, to me, it's a story of perseverance. I think the Kenobi show coming out caused people to check out that novel. I owned it, but I hadn't read it. I read it before the show came out. And then in interviews, Ewan McGregor has brought up multiple times, like, when I got done filming Kenobi, I just kind of missed the character and found out that there was this book, and I read it, and I really liked it. So Ewan McGregor has given shouts out to the Kenobi book. So it also just feels like a victory lap for an author who has worked in the EU, worked at the very beginning of the new publishing, but hasn't been around as much. So not only is it a story I'm super excited from an author whose work I really like, but it feels like a triumph for the author, and that's always cool.
Yeah, because not only, EU, but that, and he'd been, again, working for a bit there, but that Kenobi book kind of came out around the time when that was being, quote unquote, swept away, which is a perspective.
Yeah. It was one of the last, if not the last. So I think people really had why read it? Yeah,
it was that was me. That was me.
Yeah.
Post sale, it was during that time, and I hadn't been reading a ton of Star Wars books, but I was excited about that idea. I've been excited for years. What the hell did Kenobi do in the desert? And I didn't touch that book, and I still haven't. And then he's the very first author with a New Dawn. New Dawn comes out in 2014. It's the first of this new era. How exciting for him! And then you had folks like me sitting on the Jedi Alliance set saying, I don't know, this book's kind of boring. There's no Han, Luke, or Leia, no Vader. The Emperor's only mentioned, and kind of just kind of, I don't know, misinterpreting what was now coming towards us as this new era, that it wasn't just going to be a simple continuation of these characters that we did love, but it was going to be exploration of everything around it and the themes. And this was also definitely leading into Rebels. And it's a book that gives us Rey Sloane that eventually, because of this book and beyond, became one of my favorite characters. It gave us the meeting of Kanan and Hera. It gave us like drunk, kind of down and out Kanan, which was a fascinating character. It introduced us. And anyways, it goes to how we're discussing last week of going forward with the show. Maybe at times we might be a little bit more open with our struggles and showing our work on how we get to a different spot discussing the show, but choosing your words and understanding there's people involved in creating these, and there's fans of these things. So when you just come on here and say things, it sucked. It might have sucked to you. And by the way, I don't think this book sucked. But you're hurting someone, the artist, and their sales and someone who did like it, and you're alienating them, and it's not how we approach things. I want to, apologize, because that's how I did way back in 2014. And I want to revisit this. I'm excited to just second chances, man. Him come back this long after, over almost 10 years. 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great triumph, like you said, for the author.
Yeah. And what a celebration of the Phantom Menace, 25 years.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be great. Great. I'm excited. I'm excited for that. When does I put that story in last minute? Let me
April of next year.
My birthday.
April 9th. April 9th, 2024.
Well, 10 days before my birthday. I'll take it. It'll count. Love it there. All right. Well, I think that's a sweep of the news. I know there's some morsels we're not picking up, Joseph, but anything else comes to mind?
Oh, no. We will have many, many hours to discuss more news. So I'm good cutting it off here.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a lot of fun, kind of getting back in the swing of things as we wrap up the show. Shout out to the end of the show crew, who more and more of you have been tweeting and posting Discord. I stick around to the end, and we really appreciate it. Hey, you can follow us for right now on Twitter and Threads and Hive Social if you want to. ForceCenter Pod. Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. The podcast is available on Acast, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and more, but not Stitcher. Remember, Stitcher is gone now. Merch at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. You can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. We're switching to video on the YouTube side, so subscribe over there. But our Patreon members got a sneak preview of what the show will look like in full last week, and if my computer holds, this week as well. Well, look at that. You can follow me at Ken Napzok and go to my website, kennapzok.com. As I said, I'll be at LA Comic-Con Sunday, December 3rd, 3 p.m. Big panel with some wonderful folks who help make some of these characters happen on the shows we love. Putting it together, been a lot of fun. I do want to highlight one of our ForceCenter friends, Jay, sent me something he works on. I really liked it. It's called the Possibility Project. You can go to the-possibility-project.org. It's a group that empowers young people to share their stories, transform their lives, and impact their communities. You can support over there. I wanted to highlight that. You can become a partner, join the program, or watch performances all at thepossibilityproject.org. Joseph, you, sir.
Yeah, you can find me on almost all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw. I'm particularly spending some time on Blue Sky and enjoying that. I know it's hard to get those invite codes right now still, but if you get an invite code, come join me on Blue Sky, and I hope that they open it up much larger, especially with a name like Blue Sky. I hope it becomes more expansive soon, but join me over there. If you are in the Vegas area and you'd like to see the short film that I worked on, it's a horror film with some comedy in it, The Nightmare Adorable. That is going to be playing at the Sin City Horror Fest in Las Vegas. It is showing in particular at 4 p.m. on Saturday, December 2nd. You can buy tickets to the entire festival, or you can buy tickets to just that film block that The Nightmare Adorable is playing in. And I will be doing a Q&A afterwards. So if you can make it, come say hello. Information and links to all that is on my website at josephscrimshaw.com.
Wonderful. I just checked. I have 5 Blue Sky invites. I'm selling them. I'm kidding. But really, no, that's that. Thank you all for listening. We're excited to be back. That's a look at Star Wars news. And that is the end of this week's episode of the Force Center Show. We'll see you, friends. Bye.